Hello, welcome back. Jonathan Ratner from CareerWise. I'm really excited about today's presentation for three reasons. First of all, it's about Kabalas HaTorah, the receiving of the Torah. We're getting ready for Chag HaShavuos, the holiday of Shavuos is next week. So that's exciting. Second reason, we're going to talk about objective and subjective reality, and I think the tension between them and synthesizing is what life is all about. And the third reason is because I have a hands-on drill. We're going to run some numbers together today. So let's get started. So it's called effective decision making, using quantitative tools to figure out what you want. And that sort of sounds like a contradiction in terms. Quantitative analysis or tools to figure out what you want, where wanting is like a feeling thing, and quantitative tools are about thinking. So we're going to talk about that conflict between thoughts and feelings, between your mind and your heart, and how to find a happy medium or a successful outcome. So let's begin. I give you a word from our sponsors, reminding you who we are, what we do. It's market-based career counseling and professional training programs, helping people find their place in the international marketplace, in technology positions, in life sciences. So we believe in people. We believe everybody has their treasure inside, and if they can figure it out and find it, then they can do really well for themselves and find self-satisfaction and professional success. So today's video, we're going to talk about Kabalas HaTorah, the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, a decision. We're looking at it as a decision that the Jews made, a decision for your generations, for posterity, for eternity. We're then going to try to think about decision-making in the professional challenge. The sample we use today is choosing between two different job offers. So how do you make a decision? I have two job offers, which is a nice situation to be in, but how can I make an effective decision on which one to take? And then we're actually going to run the numbers. We're going to do a drill using quantitative analysis. So I have a picture here of flags from all over the world and I guess a Jew blowing shofar. Because remember, before the Torah was given to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, it had been offered to all the other nations. And they asked, well, what's in it? Is that in conflict with our lifestyle and our ethics? And so nobody really wanted it. Nobody took it. And the Jews took it. The Jews said, Naseh v'nishma. The Jews said, we'll take it even before we know what's in it, which is usually not the best way to make a decision. Here, it's God making them the offer. So they have great faith in God, his goodness. They're descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So they're coming from good stock. They're coming from a relationship. Moses has brought them out of Egypt, his leadership, and they've seen the miracles of 10 plagues. And so they're ready to jump right in and make a bold decision. We're taking the Torah, we're going to run with it, whatever it means. And yet, there is a Gemara in Shabbos, very famous Gemara, that describes the Jewish people. It's based on a verse in Exodus, in Parshas Yisro, that the Jews are standing beneath the mountain. And in English, I don't know if you could say that. You might say at the foot of the mountain, but beneath the mountain implies that the mountain is over them. So that's exactly the picture that Chazal give us, that God raised the mountain over the heads of the Jewish people, the entire camp of the Jewish people, and he raised the mountain like a giant barrel, a gigit. And he threatened them, either you take the Torah, or I'm going to smash the mountain down on your heads, and you'll all die there. Sham tieh kvuratchem. You will die and be buried there, which is an offer they can't refuse. They really have no choice. And Rava makes that point that they were sort of forced into the decision to accept the Torah. And we said that they wanted the Torah. They said Naseh v'nishma. And now we're saying it was forced. So Chazal, Tosfos, reconcile that. They wanted the written Torah, which is not that hard to keep. But all of the oral Torah, the Torah Shebal Peh, all the nitty-gritty and the details, the whole lifestyle, so that they needed to be forced. The good news is we, the Jews, accepted it later in the time of Achashverosh, 1,000 years later in Persia, with the miracles around Esther and Mordecai in that period. We were saved from Haman's decree, and with love and acceptance and willingness, the Jews again accepted the Torah, this time not under duress. So I have a beautiful picture Chagall gave us, perhaps the mountain over the heads of the Jewish people with Moses bringing down the tablets. I have another great picture here of like the Talmud, as the mountain over our heads. Anyway, this was a great decision that the Jews made, and it was a combination of desire and an offer they couldn't refuse. We got to accept it because God is really forcing our hand. So with that, we're ready to think about business decisions and all decisions. And decisions, of course, are a combination. They rely on both thoughts and feelings. So I'm taking the example, you're at a restaurant and they bring you the menu and you're looking at the menu. And I have this with people in my family. They say, what should I order? Instead of what do I want to eat, right? So what is the voice maybe of your mind saying, this is what I should do because it's the healthy thing to do. And your stomach or your heart is saying, this is what I want to eat. So I'm talking here as a carnivore. I like to eat meat. And of course, there are people who like to eat vegetables, but I'm not one of them. So I want to eat a hamburger and fries, but there's a certain voice, my conscience or my health sensitivity, whatever, a dieter inside of me says, no, you should order the health protein salad. Well, if I order the health protein salad, what's going to happen? It's not appetizing to me. So I'll pick at it. I'll eat a little bit of some of the vegetables that I don't hate as much. But at the end of the day, I won't finish it. I'll go home hungry, and I may even end up pigging out at home. So I defeated any health or diet benefits that I might have had by ordering the health meal because I ended up, gorging, binge eating later. So my point here is in an effective decision, you can't just follow the strict dictates of your mind. You have to take into account what's going on in your heart. You got to be aware of your feelings and what's driving you. In Hebrew, the word is ratzon. Okay, your ratzon is your will. And ratzon is from the language of ratz, of running. In which direction are you pulled? And you don't have to necessarily go in that direction, but you have to know which direction you're being pulled so you can address those concerns. So we're going to jump now to my decision-making drill, and then we'll come back to this slide. So let me switch my share to my Excel. And I'm not really saying you have to use Excel. In Microsoft, you could use Google Docs, Google Sheets, whatever they're called. But I am an Excel man, actually. And so it doesn't take me long to set up an Excel spreadsheet. I set this one up in advance. And here's what we're going to do. I have 2 job offers on the table. And, Baruch Hashem, my CV got me an interview. My interview skills got me a job offer. And I have 2 job offers on the table. We'll call them A and B. But let's give them names. And to make it, simplify it for our exercise, let's say one is like in a bank. So it's a corporate atmosphere. I'm going to be working in the bank. And the other one, I'm doing something, let's say in finance or whatever, but it's in a startup, okay? So we all know that a startup has a very different atmosphere. And so you're going to see what I want and where we're going and how to analyze it. So here we go. Job A is the job in the bank, and job B is the job in the startup. I made a quick list here, and your list, and again, you could do this on pencil and paper. If you're not an Excel or Google Sheets person, just take pen and paper and make a list of all the relevant considerations. Okay, everything you can think of. And so I put 11 just for brevity, but think about everything you could think of. And we'll come to the weight and the certainty in a minute. So right now, we're just going to rate each job according to each category. So is it full-time or part-time? The demands on my time. And let's, again, for argument's sake, we could give scores of 1 to 10 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. I'm going to go with 1 to 5 today for this exercise. So the bank, and we all know that banks, they're pretty strict about schedule. And at this time, it is a full-time job. And that's pretty good with me. I'm happy about that because I'm ready for a full-time job. And the startup, for argument's sake, I'm going to give it the same. But it's not clear. They've told me that the job is going to be developing because it's a young company. And so it's right now part-time, but it's going to grow into full-time. And that's not so great for me because I need to know. So I'm only going to give it a 2 in that. The commute. So I know where the bank is, and I am going to have to make a commute, which is sort of bad for me. So I'm going to give it a 1 in that. And the startup, they've talked about work from home and hybrid options. So I'm going to give it, I guess I'll give it a 5 because I really like that. Flexibility, again, banks are not so flexible. I'm going to give it a 1. And the startup, it's a bunch of people who are, millennials. They're young and flexible. So I like that. I'm going to give it a 4. Okay, the pay. The bank has offered me a really nice salary. So I'm going to give it a 5. And the startup, they got a little bit of funding, but not so much. So they can only offer me a mediocre salary. I'll give it a 3. Professional challenge. So the bank is excellent professional challenge. I'm going to give it a 4. And at the startup, what they're actually hiring me for is something I've already done before. And so it itself is not a professional challenge. I'm giving it a low score of a 2. Room to grow. The bank, not so much. It's very rigid hierarchy, and till you get a raise or an advancement in your position, it's a lot of red tape and so forth. I'll give it a 2. Whereas the startup, because of the open architecture of everything, I'm going to give it a 5. Corporate culture, okay, the bank, really straight-laced. I got to wear, what I got to wear every day to the office and so forth. I'm going to sit in a cubicle, not my style. I'm giving it a 1. I love the corporate culture of the startup, giving it a 5. Okay, values. The bank protects people's money. I like that. But it is a bank. They make money off people's money and so forth. I'll give it a 4. This startup, also they have a beautiful idea to help humanity. I'll give them a 5. Job security. Okay, so the bank's been around a long time, and even though we're in uncertain times, but in job security, the bank gets a 5, and the startup gets a 1 because they raised some money, but who knows? So low score on that. Okay, the next category is about what other people want for me and from me. So I have a wife and children. Maybe I have parents that have input about my job, or whoever, other people who have some sort of say in what I do. And so my wife wants me, let's just say, my wife wants me to take the job in the bank. So I'm going to give that one a 5. I'm not for my wife. And she doesn't really want me to take the startup. She thinks it's too risky and our financial future is dependent on it. I'm going to give it a 1. And what about my gut feeling? Okay. So my gut feeling, working in a bank, not really my cup of tea. I'll give it a 2 because, okay, some redeeming factors. And again, the startup, this currently doesn't have a good professional challenge, but I do like a lot of things about it. So I'm giving it a 2. Okay, so guess what? Right now, when everything is weighed evenly, so job B, which is the startup, wins, but very, very close race. Okay, 35 to 34, almost too close to call. Okay, but let's say, the right thing to do now is that not all these factors are equivalent in their importance. And this is sort of the beauty of algebra, that you can multiply things. And if you multiply by things, you can change the final score by giving the appropriate weight to each issue. So again, this is sort of imaginary, but I'm running the drill. So full-time, part-time, that's not the main thing. Commuting is, also not the main thing. Flexibility is really important to me. So I'm weighting these also 1 to 5. I'm giving this a 3. So you see what that does is, again, I already built the formulas here. It raises the score to a much higher score. So whoever wins on flexibility, I like to have flexibility. That's very important to me. But pay, money talks. Okay. So money's also got to be, I got to give it a 4. Okay. Professional challenge, I'll give it a 2. Room to grow, really important to me. Give it a 4. Corporate culture, also really important to me, a 4. Values, I'm a values-driven person. I'm giving that a 5. And job security is also important, but I'll give it a 3. And my spouse, okay, happy wife is happy life, right? So I got to give that a 5. Oh, look at that. It's a tie score, okay? And now it comes down to my gut feeling. And interestingly, my gut feeling, I don't know why I wrote this before, I wrote 2 and 2, which would make it still a tie no matter what I changed the gut feeling to. So let me tell you, my gut feeling here is really for the startup. And again, I win by only 1 point. Okay. But let's say, okay, I've run this drill and it comes out, let me do it a little bit differently. Let me put a 4 here. Okay, so it comes out a 1 point victory for the bank. And you tell me, okay, you've run this really effective, sort of business school, MBA, decision-making drill, and it's been decided mathematically that you're going to take the job in the bank. And I'm like, oh no, I don't want to work in the bank. That'll make me miserable. So maybe I should add another line here of misery or something like that. But let's include that all in gut feeling. And let's realize that for me, a gut feeling is very important, how I feel about this decision. So even though I've taken into account a lot of objective things, and I've even weighted them, but my gut feeling is really important to me. So I'm going to give that a 5. Okay. And again, my gut feeling really is to favor the startup. Another thing I wanted to take into account before I finish up the tally is certainty. Sometimes you don't know everything. So you think something, but you're not really sure. The commute, it depends how many days a week do they really make me come. So it's not really a certainty. It's really only a half. Okay. And the flexibility is 90% certainty. And I could make it for job A and job B, but I'm just, again, trying to show you the concept here of sort of the algebra that things that you don't really know. Okay, room to grow. I think it's that, but I don't really know. So I'll give it a 75. And so now, again, we're getting to a more sophisticated mathematical model to help me make a rational decision. And yet I'm not giving up on my feelings and my attitude towards the decision, because if I make a decision that's only by the numbers, I may make myself miserable. And then I'm going to, go to a psychologist for therapy. I'm miserable in my job. I have this good job and I'm a responsible father and spouse and I'm earning, etc. But I'm miserable. So it's not always just to use your brain and follow the numbers to come up with your decision. You got to take into account also your feelings. How do you feel about this? Your values and your feelings. And so by changing the weight of these various factors, you can sort of affect the outcome of your decision. So again, I'm trying, okay, here I won by 1/10 of a point, 129.3 to 129.2, taking the job in the startup, which is what I really want. And so you might ask if at the end of the day, I'm playing with the numbers to get it to be what I want it to be. So why take into account all these factors? Why run the numbers? Why do the drill? And my answer is the drill is worthwhile because this helps me isolate factors, to think about all the factors, because 3, 6 months, a year down the road, I'm going to be in this situation. I'm going to be asking myself, why did I do this to myself? Am I happy? Was it smart? So if I've taken these things into account in advance, that will help me. I could plan. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I took the job with the lower score in values. Okay, the bank is not so much my values. So, but let's say I took the job in the bank. So for my values, I'm going to join a volunteer organization. I can supplement this decision with other decisions and other things I'll do in my spare time. So by analyzing and isolating and giving numbers to things, that helps us advance the conversation and think clearly and analytically and strategically, tactically about the issues. And my point here today is that we want to take subjective factors into account as well as objective factors and come up with, some sort of aggregate and then see how we feel about it. And if we're really ready to abide by that, or do we need to readjust the weights or the certainties in order to come up with something that makes sense objectively, but also leaves us feeling good subjectively, because that's where professional success lies. When you're happy doing something that makes sense. If it only makes sense, and I know people like this, they've made the smart decision and they won't leave their job now because they're only, 3 or 5 years from retirement. So they're doing stuff they hate and they're bitter and miserable and it sort of ruins their life. So that can't be called an effective decision. You got to make decisions which take into account both thoughts and feelings in order to really put yourself in a good place. So I'm wrapping it up today by sharing what we just talked about of tailing it up, of making a list of all the relevant considerations, weighing them, giving them a weight, again, in algebra. Given uncertainty coefficient, you're not sure, I think it's like this, there's a 75% chance, whatever. Consider the results, refine the numbers, go through them again, tweak them, and then make a decision you can live with and know why you did it. Because then you're empowered and you've made an effective decision. It's not right and wrong. This is your future. And you could make mistakes and you could quit your job. You could go back and try again. But you want to try to make a decision that's going to move you closer to your goals and give you professional satisfaction and success. If you're happy doing what you're doing and you're in an environment that you feel comfortable doing things that you excel at, that's a good recipe for success. Thanks for listening. We believe in empowering individuals for success. That's what we're doing. If you'd like to set up an appointment or join one of our courses, let us know. Thank you very much for being here. Have a great day.